All right, all you Tony Awards fans, I'm Paul Sheehan, executive editor of Gold Derby, and I'm here with two of our theater contributors who know far more about this than I do, David Buchanan and Sam Ekman. So, as per usual, we're just less than 48 hours away from nominations, and I'm asking these guys, what do I need to do to predict to beat the rest of the so-called experts? Because our theater experts who write for other publications, they're not the experts, it's David and Sam. So let's start at the top with Best Musical. And so, David, what should I be predicting to get nominated for Best Musical?
I think that's pretty easy lineup. So it's definitely going to be Dear Evan Hansen, Natasha Peer, and The Great Comet, Come From Away. And then the fourth slot, I guess, could be potentially up for debate. I currently have Groundhog Day. I think Sam probably has the same, but that's on a little bit shakier ground than the other three.
Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely three locks, which is Dear Evan Hansen, Come From Away, and The Great Comet. I'm going with Groundhog Day right now because they got great reviews. The show is really fun and original, and they kind of, not that it's great that he hurt himself, but Andy Karl injured himself during a press performance 2 nights before opening, and they had to cancel a show, and then he had to go on with a sprained leg, and they've also had trouble with the sets during an earlier preview, and they kind of had to rally and did this concert style performance, and it's kind of created like buzz that you can't pay for. Like money can't buy the kind of positive buzz, and they've become this cast that can whatever situation's thrown at them, they're going to be the best troopers on Broadway and work through it. And I think they've kind of earned everyone's respect that way. So I'm going with them for the fourth slot. It could be if there's a fifth slot or something upsets it. I think Bandstand has kind of come out of nowhere at the end of the season and gotten a lot better reviews than people thought it would. So, and it has some, like Laura Osnes is the star, as well as Corey Cott, people, Broadway veterans. So that could be a potential spoiler, but I'm going with Groundhog Day.
So you mentioned the potential fifth nominee, because I think there were enough shows that opened. It's kind of like at the Oscars with certain races, like if there's enough animated movies, then they'll expand the category. So there is the potential that the nominating committee that I think was meeting this weekend, if the vote's close enough, there could be a fifth nominee. That nominating committee is about 4 theater professionals who commit to going to every single show through the season. And then they get together and they sort of do some balloting. And on the weekend, I think there's a little bit of jockeying. Who's your favorite? And so what do you think the odds are, David, of a fifth Best Musical nominee?
I think there's more potential for that happening in a few of the other top categories than Best Musical, because I think there's many more choices that could fit that fifth slot. Anastasia could also potentially grab that fifth slot, where other categories where there are lesser choices, I could see the race or the number of votes being tight enough, where I think it's like a 3% margin that has to be in the vote total for there to be an additional slot. So I don't know if it's going to happen in Best Musical, but it happened in a lot of the races last year.
I think since they've introduced the tie rule, it was a fairly new rule. I think it's happened in at least one category each year, except for 1 year, perhaps. I think it's probably more likely in the play side, but
agreed. Yeah,
I would say it's more likely for the plays, both revival and new play.
Yeah.
So, you told me about who the likely nominees are going to be. So, at this point, if you had to predict a winner, and it is that you do have to predict a winner, who is going to win at this point?
I think they all have a shot, which is because I'm picturing a situation in my mind where Dear Evan Hansen takes score, The Great Comet takes Best Director for Rachel Chavkin, and Come From Away takes Best Book. I think that's actually a very likely and possible outcome, and those are sort of 3 of the top musical categories, and makes it hard to predict who will win. Right now, I think the favorite is Dear Evan Hansen. It has the emotional resonance, it's timely, and that seems to be out front, but I also think that the other 2 have, are unique enough to make a dent. I don't think it's clear cut, but I'm going to go with Dear Evan Hansen for now, with Come From Away in a close second.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said, including what those shows will probably take below the line. And it's really exciting after, I'll just say after last year, where we knew from way before nominations that Hamilton would not only win Best Musical, but win almost everything else. To have a real exciting race in Best Musical is wonderful to see.
Yeah, it's not going to be like last year at all. There's
No.
not going to be, there will be things that win multiple awards, but nothing I don't think is going to just sweep the whole way through. There's a lot.
No.
It's a really great year with many quality contenders.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Groundhog Day with Andy Carl getting injured. Do you think that will that make him the sentimental favorite for Best Actor? He's been nominated a couple of times, and that maybe versus the Cat Star from Dear Evan Hansen. Where would you?
The race is.
I'm assuming you.
I would say it's tough because Ben Platt kind of had, everyone thought he had the race sewn up really, and Andy Carl really got just absolute love letters from every critic and has been working on Broadway for a while. Sometimes they want to reward, the sort of veteran Broadway guy who's been nominated for Rocky and On the 20th Century. And so they could figure, well, this is his time. And maybe Groundhog Day could win other things, but I think that's maybe its most likely place to reward the musical with an actual win after looking ahead of nominations. So I'm still going with Ben Platt because I think it's a more emotional performance, more dramatic, which can have a little bit of an edge. But I know a lot of people who are probably voting for Andy Carl, given the chance.
Yeah, I'd have him in second place behind Ben Platt. I would also add to Sam's comment and say what Andy Carl has to do in the role is really difficult, and he does it so well, is that he's such an unlikable character for at least the first half of the show, and to make that character interesting and endearing so that when he does become likable in the second half, that the audience is rooting for him and with him from beginning to end is really difficult. And I think the way that he's handled his injury and still performing and is just incredible. And I think the industry could rally around that. So yeah. I don't think it's as sure of a thing for Ben Platt as maybe we would say it was in the fall or early spring. But I still have Ben Platt out front.
And it's super physical too. It's not like a dance heavy role, but he's just moving the whole time. He has to do all these quick changes where a body double takes his place during that whole death sequence.
Fantastic,
in the movie. And it's just like, I don't know how he keeps the energy up, especially with an injury, to do all that. So that could be pretty impressive and certainly get him votes.
Yeah.
And who do you think rounds out that race, Sam?
I think the other sure thing is David Hyde Pierce for Hello, Dolly, as Horace Van de Gelder. And then the other two are sort of shaky. Right now I have Josh Groban for The Great Comet, and I have, I've switched the last one out a couple times. Right now I have Christian Borle for Falsettos getting in fifth. That being said, John Briones, or I'm probably saying his last name wrong, I apologize, and Corey Cott actually could both conceivably get in, but they really love Christian Borle. They gave him the Tony for Something Rotten when people weren't necessarily predicting that as a slam dunk. It was a little bit of a surprise. And Falsettos was pretty well regarded, and it's a musical that has a really special place in a lot of theater lovers' hearts. So I think he takes the fifth slot, but it's not guaranteed. It did close a while ago.
Yeah, I have the same five, and I would say something that helps Christian Borle as well secure that last slot is the nominating committee is going recently to go see him in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, a show that has not done very well critically, but they're seeing him in that, and they're probably being reminded of how fantastic he was in Falsettos in the fall. So just by virtue of going to see him on stage in the spring will probably remind them of his earlier performance. So I think he's probably in there. And like you said, Sam, he has 2 Tonys already, especially when we weren't necessarily predicting him for a second. He has as many Tonys as Patti LuPone and Christine Ebersole, who will also contend this year. So I think people forget just how beloved he is in the industry, that's his stature at this early in his career, or kind of the mid stage of his career. So I think he's probably pretty secure in there.
And you mentioned David Hyde Pierce, Susan Haladali, and he won this category a few years back for Curtains, which I recall being a bit of a surprise. When I was doing a little research on Dolly, I realized that even though it won a record number of Tonys back in 1964, the man that originated that role didn't even get nominated back then. So it would be, when there was one of those many revivals that Carol Channing did, her 1978 co-star Eddie Bracken did get nominated. So that shifts over to the best actress in a musical race. So you mentioned Christine Ebersole and Patti LuPone in Warpaint. Do you both think that they're both getting nominated?
Yes. So obviously the front runner for Best Actress in a Musical is Bette Midler, and I mean, I would be shocked. I would like place all my savings, which are not much, but I would place them all on Bette Midler winning a Tony Award. It's just the most phenomenal, amazing experience in that theater. But I think last year we had Audra McDonald in Shuffle Along, and we all predicted Audra McDonald would get in because she's 6-time Tony winner, queen of the Tonys, Meryl Streep of the Tonys. And they didn't. They said, no, we're going to make room for Philippa Sue, the breakout star in Hamilton. We're going to make room for Carmen Cusack, who's been working for years and years and finally has this awesome role. And so, Audra, you've won 6. You're going to take a year off. And I feel like there's a lot of young, up-and-coming actresses in this category who they may want to reward, and they might say to Christine and Patti, you know, we've already given you 2 and we nominate you all the time, so one or both of them might take a year off here, but the performances are phenomenal. I think it's worth, they're worthy performances. I am predicting them right now.
Mischievous.
Sorry?
Nominating committee, David. Which one of the two, I mean, go with? If they only give one, if Christine Ebersole and Patti LuPone, if only one of them gets a nomination, who would you predict it was going to be?
I am so divided on that question because to me, Patti LuPone stole the show of the two. Not that Christine Ebersole wasn't fantastic, and they both get, what's so wonderful about the way the show is crafted is they both get kind of solo opening numbers, and they both get 11 o'clock numbers. So you never feel like one is being favored over the other in terms of who has more stage time. I thought that Patti had better material in terms of her book scenes and her songs, because she gets these really loud songs that she can belt. They're perfect for her range. And Christine gets songs equally suited to her vocal strengths, but just side by side. I think Brantley in his review compared it to a flute and a trumpet next to each other. So I think Patti has the showier role. Brantley's line, not mine, has the showier role. So I would probably put my money on Patti, but I read a lot of people favor Christine Ebersole's 11 o'clock number, Pink, and maybe her more nuanced take on it. I don't think it's going to be
better. I think that's the best song in the show is Pink.
Yeah.
I think it's the difference of a more dramatic performance versus a more comedic one. They both have elements of each.
Yeah.
But Patti is hysterical, and Christine gets the more emotional scenes for the most part. I mean, I do think what I said before. I do think they're both going to get in. I haven't predicted. I just think about things too much, so I come up with these crazy theories. But I think they're the next two after Bette Midler.
Yeah, I think the one difference between what happened last year with Audra and what's happening this year is in Shuffle Along, I think Shuffle Along is going to do, or did vastly better than Warpaint is going to do in terms of nominations. But Audra had to jockey for stage time with so many different leading or featured actors. There were 4, 5, 6 marquee names sharing the stage with her, whereas when you go to Warpaint, you are going to see 2 legends on stage, and they get their due service out of the show. So I'm pretty confident that they'll both get in. I'll be really surprised if one of them is left off.
So now, Sam, you say about Bette Midler and front runner to win, but I think about the Tony nominating committee. I think about the fact that for that solo performance as the Hollywood super agent Sue Mengers a couple of years ago in a play.
Last.
Only person on stage, does a wonderful job, got great reviews. I think about Daniel Radcliffe not getting nominated for How to Succeed. You know, I mean, could you see her name not being on the list on Tuesday morning? Bette Midler's name not being on the list?
No. I mean, she's incredible. I think I'll Eat You Last, when she didn't get nominated for the Sue Menders solo show, I think the complaint was that it was too light of material for her. That was the thing I kept hearing. That was also a very stacked year for Best Actress, and that was not. Yeah, there were just a lot of contenders that year. I think that's divvied up the votes. This is like you walk in and Bette just has the whole audience in the palm of her hand for the entire time. She could just like roll her eyes or flick her wrist, and everyone will just, their heads will explode. It's unbelievable. She gets about 3 standing ovations through the whole thing. By the time it's done, I'd be pretty shocked. I think the harder thing is to figure out, if you have Bette Midler, Patty, and Christine, who takes the other 2 slots, because everyone else who's in the running is sort of at equal footing, I think. Right now I have Laura Osnes and Danae Benton from The Great Comet, but I just saw Miss Saigon last night finally, and Ava Noblezada just sings the crap out of that score, and she's incredible and has a great story that she was, I think it's her debut. She was plucked out of nowhere to be in the London production. They brought it here, and she's phenomenal. So I could see them also going that route as well and keep moving those 3 ladies around in the last 2 slots.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I have Denis Benton for The Great Comet as well, and then I'm debating for that last slot if it's going to be Laura Osnes, Nobelzada, or Christy Altomar from Anastasia. I saw the show recently and didn't like the musical as a whole, so I think if voters feel similar in that regard, nothing against her performance. She sings the role really well and she acts the role really well, but I think if there's a better overall musical that maybe like a Laura Osnes in Bandstand, which actually did better with critics in terms of reviews, then she can take that last slot. So yeah, I agree with Sam. It's kind of a toss-up for me between, I think there's 1 open slot and three actresses competing for it. I think Denis Benton, based on the how I think Great Comet's going to be received overall, is probably pretty safe in 4th place.
Yeah, my only concern is that the musical is so big with so many characters that character is less of a lead, if you will, than, Dolly Levi is.
That's a good point.
Bandstand.
Yeah.
So they're, 2 women from Warpaint and Laura Osnes from Bandstand.
Yeah.
That's my only thing there, is that she doesn't really dominate her show in the way that some of the other women do.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So not to give short shrift to the featured roles, because they do get the Tony that's the same size as the lead ones, but I just want to jump over to, because we did talk about Best Play and then the leading performers in plays. So in terms of the lineup of Best Play, is there one that's far out in front, Sam? Is there something that you think is plays this year, or?
Well, I think it's actually been a really awesome year for straight plays on Broadway, to be honest. I think there's kind of 4 plays that are out front, which is A Doll's House Part 2, Sweat, Oslo, and Indecent. I can see a scenario where any one of those 4 can win. That's the 4 I have in the lineup right now. I think if there's a 5th slot, it would probably go to Significant Other, maybe. I was a big fan of The Encounter, so I would put that in the 5th slot, but I think it probably won't compete for play. But I think the 4 are pretty set. My personal favorite is A Doll's House Part 2. I think that, for me, is more out front because it's probably the more accessible of all of them, even though it has the Part 2 in the title, which could put off some people. I think it's a very smart comedy. It's looking at not necessarily new things, but feminism and marital status and all these things of a through a lens of the past and Ibsen's play, but with contemporary dialogue. It's very funny. It has an all-star cast, so that's what I have out front.
Yeah, I have the same. Yep, I have the same 4 in the lineup. The 5th slot, I'm also considering. So in addition to the significant other, when we have to put that 5th in, I'm also thinking Heisenberg from The Fall could sneak in, because that one, I know it's long forgotten because it closed in December, but that got really stellar reviews. That if that had opened in March or April, I think it would definitely make the lineup. As for what's out front, I think legitimately any of the 4 could win. There's 2 Broadway debuts of Pulitzer Prize winning playwrights in this category: Sweat for Lynn Nottage and Indecent for Paula Vogel. Lynn Nottage just won the 2017 Pulitzer for Sweat, so I think by virtue of that win and the buzz around it, that might have a leg up on the rest of the competition. But I do know that there's a lot of people who weren't as enamored with that play as I was. I thought it was great, but I know quite a few people that thought it was kind of preachy. So I don't know. I don't think it's a clear front runner by any stretch of the imagination.
And then you mentioned Heisenberg, and Dave, you wrote a wonderful piece about these Mary Louise Parker, the star of that, Kate Blanchett, 2-time Oscar winner, was in a play that closed, and you kind of, only one of them is going to get nominated because they're in closed shows. So who do you think fills out the best actress in a play race then? I guess women from shows that are currently running, and they can be either new plays or revivals, right?
Right. So the lineup that I have now is Laurie Metcalf. I think she's out front, and I think she's finally going to win. This will be her 4th Tony nomination. And what's so incredible about some of her previous nominations is it was the only nomination that the show got overall. Misery, she was nominated in this category. It got no other nominations. The Other Place, it got no other nominations, but she got in. And it's finally, I think, a role. Sam just wrote a great article, spotlight on her, and I think it was spot on in that it's just a perfect role for her and a perfect showcase for any actress of her talent to joscillate from comedy to drama so quickly. I also have in the category Laura Linney, Allison Janney. I'm wavering on Sally Field, and we can talk about that in a minute, but I have Sally Field in there for now. And then I have Kate getting in instead of Mary Louise Parker, just because the show was more recent. Heisenberg, like I said, closed in December. The Present, I think, closed in March, so it might just be fresher in the nominating committee's mind. But personally, I would nominate Mary Louise Parker.
And Sam?
I think I just switched her in too, because I think there's sort of, well, I agree. I have, I think the battle at the end will sort of be Laura Linney versus Laurie Metcalf. Laurie Metcalf's role is just like, it's all like someone tailor-made. It's like, what is everything Laurie Metcalf is great at, and wrote this role. And then I have Allison Janney and Kate Blanchett getting in. I think the last slot is pretty open. I have Mary Louise Parker. I just put her in today, I think.
Oh, interesting.
I know. I don't really know what I'm doing there. I keep switching people out this year. But she just has a lot of industry respect. I know, I think in your article you cited that Brantley said it was the best performance she's given since Proof.
Yep.
And even though shows are closed, like shows can get in if they're closed. It's harder to win, but they can certainly get nominated because the nominators see everything and they have to sit down with everything.
Yep.
So it is possible, I think, and it was just a 2-person play, so it was a great acting showcase. She really stands out. So that's who I have, but I do think Sally Field can get in. I mean, it would be kind of bizarre for Amanda Wingfield to not make a Tony appearance, but the other thing is, like, we just had a Glass Menagerie not too long ago. It feels like yesterday, the Cherry Jones production with Celia King and Bolger, and so I don't know how, like, I don't know that there's a strong impetus to go back and revisit that, which might hurt them. So she could get in, but I think it's shaky.
I would add to that too. The last revival had such industry support. I think most people thought that that was a perfect revival of that piece, whereas this one has been received far more divisively. So if you're thinking about the really small group of nominators in this that are making this decision, I could definitely see more voters voting for Mary Louise or Kate over Sally, as much as they might love her as an actress and even in this role. It doesn't take many votes to knock somebody in or out of a category. So I think that might swing it against her.
And that's why if we want to talk about revival, that's why I think a lot of experts have Glass Menagerie in there, but I think it's going to fall out because
me too.
If it was a less crowded year, then a divisive piece could break through, but it's a divisive production going up against at least 4 things that are not, that got wide acclaim and people are liking it across the board.
Yep.
So I think it sort of falls out.
Yeah, I don't have it in my revival lineup.
But I'm curious what you think about Little Foxes and the fact that Laura Linney's alternating role with Cynthia Nixon. There's 2 women, right? Regina and Birdie. And I guess opening night, Laura Linney played Regina, Birdie, but they switch back and forth. And I almost felt like Cynthia Nixon, like it came down, okay, she's going to be down and featured. And I just would have liked like a sideshow nomination where they nominated the 2 women that played the Siamese twins for the original production. Like, it seems very unfair because you could very well have Tony voters going to a performance.
They're not, though.
Cynthia Nixon gets nominated and featured, but they see them doing the other role.
No, I don't think they're seeing that. Yeah.
MTC made a very smart decision. They were very strategic about, they're only inviting Tony voters to shows where Laura Linney is Regina and Cynthia is Birdie. They kind of did that to get out in front of the Tony nomination process to put them in those categories, because that way they don't have to compete against each other.
Yep.
Because they really, like, the Tonys haven't been doing those joint nominations. They've kind of made a very conscious effort to get away from that. Even the last sideshow revival, they made those Emily Paget and Erin Davies compete as separate nominees.
Yeah, and I would add to that too is with audiences and critics who have seen both, they had a clear preference for Cynthia Nixon as Birdie and Laura Linney as Regina, where it wasn't necessarily that they couldn't decide who they liked in what role better. There seemed to be a strong preference for the way that they have structured it. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they're in contention in the categories that they are.
Who do you think wins this race, the Best Actress in a Play race?
Well, it's interesting because I think both actress in a play and featured actress in a play can come down between a woman from A Doll's House Part 2 and a woman from The Little Foxes.
Yeah.
Because I think featured actress could very well be Jane Howdyshell versus Cynthia Nixon, maybe with Joanna Day from Sweat in there as well. But I'm going with Laurie Metcalf just because she just seems to have so much industry respect, and like she never leaves the play for the entire time. She's just like this like ball of energy, like rampaging across the stage, and it's phenomenal to watch. So I think she gets it. It's just such a strong acting showcase for her.
Yeah, remember, Paul, I think we said this in one of our videos last year after the nominations came out, that we will never underestimate Laurie Metcalf again, because I don't think any of us had her
out the night before nominations.
I know. Who would have thought that Misery, which didn't do well with critics, would land her as great as she was? I thought she was really good in making that role her own in the shadow of Kathy Bates, but who would have thought that she would get in? And I remember us saying we better not underestimate her again, so I have her out front too. But yeah, I have Linney in a strong second place. I'd also not underestimate Allison Janney. She just got rave reviews for 6 Degrees of Separation, but I don't know if that role, in terms of maybe the heft of the dramatic heft of the role, will stand up to a new role like Nora, or not a new role, but a role in a new play, like Metcalf is playing in A Doll's House Part 2.
Well, It's so interesting. I mistakenly thought that Stockard Channing had won the Tony for 6 Degrees, and she didn't. It's not
Courtney
a.
B. Vance did for 6 Degrees. He won lead actor, but Stockard didn't.
And then on the acting, the actor in a play. So run down the list that you think is going to get in, David.
All right, so right now I have Kevin Kline out front, kind of by default. I have Corey Hawkins in second place. I also have Chris Cooper for Doll's House Part 2, Gideon Glick for Significant Other, and Jefferson Mays for Oslo. I'm not really sure about all of those. I'll say I didn't think Corey Hawkins would get in when both he and John Benjamin Hickey were considered lead, but now that Hickey is in featured, I think Corey Hawkins has a really strong chance of getting in. But I'm kind of wavering on Jefferson Mays. I had Mark Ruffalo in my predictions a few days ago. I just bumped Mark Ruffalo out, so I'm still on the fence on a few of those.
I think that this category is so bizarre to me because I have Gideon Glick out front for Significant Other. I think if that play was still running, he would win in a landslide. I think he will be nominated. I don't know if depends on how many people were able to see him, if he can actually win. But I have Gideon Glick, Kevin Kline, Simon McBurney for The Encounter, Corey Hawkins, 6 Degrees of Separation, and Mark Ruffalo with The Price. I'm not super confident about anyone past Kevin Kline. I do think Simon McBurney, like The Encounter was one of the most unique things I've ever seen, and it's just like, if that show is winning too, if that show is running, I think he could win too, because I don't think any actor this season does more than he did on stage. The problem is it's closed, and I think Corey Hawkins has had a great enough year ever since Straight Outta Compton. He's been on The Walking Dead. He led the new 24 series. He does an awesome job in 6 Degrees of Separation, and it's a role that was won a Tony before. So with John Benjamin Hickey out of his way, he doesn't have to compete with a co-star anymore. I think he's pretty good to get in.
Yeah.
And then I'm not confident about Mark Ruffalo. The Price seems to kind of be like it got a good reception, but sort of is flying under the radar a little bit, and he hasn't been showing up. I know like Drama Desk and Outer Critics and stuff is not precursors in the same way as it is for like Oscars. We have precursors, but you'd expect him to show up somewhere being a movie star, and no one has really gone for him. So I'm thinking Chris Cooper from A Doll's House Part 2 could get in there. I might be switching him in.
Yeah, I just bumped Ruffalo. I think The Price will do better in the featured actor category. I think Danny DeVito is definitely going to get in.
I think Danny DeVito could win.
Yeah, I think he could win too. And I have Tony Shalhoub as, I think I still have him in my lineup because he's very well liked among the theater industry. So I think he'll do well in featured. I just moved Ruffalo out because I think when they ruled that Chris Cooper would stay in lead, we thought maybe he would be bumped down to featured. That's going to be a Best Play nominee. I think it's going to get all 4 actors in. So I think he's definitely in there. So I think Ruffalo might fall out.
Yeah, because the acting is really the highlight. Like, there's no set and anything to distract you from the acting in that show. So he could probably slip in.
And the thing about the movie star comment too is I just did a little bit of research when I was writing about Cate Blanchett, is that the nominating committee is very shrewd that if you're not giving a Tony caliber performance, they are not letting you into the lineup regardless of who you are or what you're doing. So while I thought Mark Ruffalo was good in The Price, I thought the whole ensemble, the 4 actors in that show were fantastic together. I don't know if Ruffalo on his own would make this list, so I'm going to leave him out. I think I've made up my mind. Probably not.
I know we skipped features for musical, but the featured actor and actress for play, I want to know who you have, David, because it's the biggest
I know.
I've ever seen.
I know.
We have so many plays that all the actors are in featured. There's like Jitney and The Play That Goes Wrong and Sweat and Indecent and there's other ones I'm forgetting, and other ones where they have a lot of multiple viable contenders and featured.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what to do. I
Yeah.
have Danny DeVito and then End of Confidence.
Okay, so I have in that category, I have Danny DeVito. I think a really strong second is John Douglas Thompson from Jitney. I would even give him the Tony for. I thought he was brilliant, and I don't know if they will. I don't know if he'll win because the price is still running, and there are some other showier roles in that. But he just gave a marvel of a performance in Jitney. I also have Tony Shalhoub. I have Michael Aronov from Oslo, and I have Nathan Lane rounding out the category. But like you said, I'm not confident about any of those other than maybe DeVito and John Douglas Thompson.
You might have convinced me to put John Douglas Thompson in because I feel like
yeah.
I just took him out because I've been shuffling this around to see
Yeah.
how it looks. But I feel like he has to get in. I just don't know who to take out. I have Danny DeVito with the price. I have Michael Aronov in Oslo.
Yep.
Because I think that's getting into best play. And he completely steals and owns Act Two. I think he'll be the acting representation of that show.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
I have Richard Thomas for The Little Foxes.
That's definitely possible.
I have Nathan Lane for The Front Page.
Definitely.
And then I have Richard Topol for Indecent.
Oh.
It just that play really blew me away, and it's hard because all the actors play multiple roles and everything. He's the only actor though that does not play multiple roles. He's sort of, as the audience, our intro into the world, because he's discovering the old play they're discussing, God of Vengeance, for the first time as we are, and it's really powerful and he's really great. So I feel like he is in there if Indecent is a best play nominee.
Yep. So go ahead, Paul.
No. I was going to ask you about play revival, but if you wanted to say something.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had two comments on some of the people we mentioned. So Nathan Lane, he got great reviews for The Front Page, but I feel like with The Front Page, I don't have The Front Page getting into revival. I feel like The Front Page could be a situation like one of Lane's more recent shows, the revival of It's Only a Play. They did get one acting nomination, but he didn't get in. And in such a crowded field, especially of current shows that are running, he might miss out. I have him in, but I have him right now.
Maybe Nathan Lane is the victim of my Audra theory.
Yeah, he absolutely could be. And the other thing I wanted to say before we move on is in kind of some background on Tony Shalhoub too. I think if one gets in from the price, it'll be Danny DeVito, but Tony got in for Golden Boy with Danny Burstein in this category where they had multiple nominees from that show. So I don't know if I think Danny is definitely in from the price, and I think Tony's possible. It's happened before where he's gotten in with a co-star. And he got in for Act 1 too. They seem to really like him in roles that I not necessarily would have expected would be Tony nominated. So I might leave him for now, but maybe not. I'm a bit overwhelmed with the featured categories.
What do you think for play revival? We've mentioned a few plays that have been revived. What do you think of do you think there'll be 4 nominees? How many will there be in that category?
Well, there's a guaranteed 4 with a potential for 5. Right now, I think it's definitely The Little Foxes and Jitney are guaranteed. I think those are the 2 that are out front. I also have 6 Degrees of Separation in there. I think that's pretty safe.
Yep.
And the fourth slot could go a few different ways. I have Present Laughter going in, but I could see the price taking it instead. Just because Present Laughter is a play that's done often and was revived not that long ago with Victor Garber in the Kevin Kline role. So there might be more impetus to reward something that we haven't seen in a while. The last revival of The Price was in the 90s, I believe. So it's not an August Wilson play that's done very often, or not August Wilson.
Arthur Miller.
Arthur Miller.
Yeah. I have the same. I have the same 4 as you do, Sam. I have Present Laughter in last in my 4. I think if it's If it's going to be bumped out by anything, it'll be the price. If they're 5, I think the price is in that 5th slot.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm thinking about the price, though, is we just came off of last season, which was kind of the year of Arthur Miller. He had his centennial recently, and the 2 revivals last year of The Crucible and A View from the Bridge were so acclaimed and such unique takes on those works that I think kind of in comparison, the price comes up a little bit short. I thought the production overall was great, and the quartet of actors were terrific. And Terry Kinney's direction was really smart, but definitely not as showy as Ivo Van Hove's direction of the 2 revivals last year. So for that reason alone, I think maybe Miller Fever has subdued a bit, and maybe that gets left out for Present Laughter, which got much better reviews than I expected it to.
So if it was Miller Fever last year, it's Midler Fever this year. And I'm assuming you both think that Hello Dolly will win Best Revival of a Musical?
Oh, yeah. I think that is maybe the easiest category to call of the night. I think along with Bette Midler, that's like, if you were betting money on Hamilton winning Best Musical last year, then you should bet money on Hello Dolly winning Revival this year. I think the only thing, I think falsettos will also get into that category, and then it's just a matter of if it's Sunset Boulevard or Miss Saigon that gets the 3rd slot, because there's only 3 unless there's a tie for that one.
Yeah, and I think this is the category I was thinking of when we were talking about maybe having an extra slot if the vote tally is really close, because I agree with Sam. Hello Dolly and falsettos are the 2 guarantees. And then I think that 3rd slot has 2 choices, Miss Saigon or Sunset Boulevard. And I could absolutely see, let's say the nominating committee is 50 members. I could see 26 going for one and 24 going for the other, because they have very few options to go with, and they both get in. So I think that we could definitely see this happened last year too, where I don't remember what. So it was Color Purple, She Loves Me, and then I think people were debating between Fiddler on the Roof and Spring Awakening, and they both got in just because there was the dearth of other options that the vote can so easily come out so close.
And then finally, I just wanted to get into the play conversation, a bit about featured actress and actor in a musical. Do you think that Bette Midler's, the glow around Bette Midler, will that bring Gavin Creel and Kate Baldwin? Will they get win Tonys? I think that they both. I was doing some research. I thought Kate Baldwin actually played this part in Paper Mill about 10 or 12 years ago when Tova Fulcher was Dolly. So they're both theater veterans. Could you see them winning?
Yeah, I'm a Kate Baldwin super fan and have been for a long time. So I would love to see her win a Tony. I think she's definitely getting nominated. She has a little more competition in terms of a win, because I also definitely think that category is sort of locked up with Stephanie J. Block and Rachel Bay Jones and Jen Colella with a 5th open slot.
Yep.
I have Amber Gray in there from The Great Comet for now. But I think it's hard because I feel like Kate Baldwin and Stephanie J. Block almost take the same archetype, if you will, for voting narrative. They're sort of like long-working Broadway workhorses who, have earned industry respect over the years and are definitely going to both be rewarded. I don't know if they'll go for one over the other. Stephanie J. Block maybe has the showier role. I think her I'm Bringing Down was one of the best numbers of the season. And then it's sort of them versus Rachel Bay Jones, who has the emotional role. She's the younger actress in the breakout Best Musical Player. So I think that could give the edge to Rachel Bay Jones to actually take home the win when we're talking about actually wins. But Kate Baldwin's definitely getting in. I think Gavin Creel could win his category, though.
I agree. I don't think Kate Baldwin's going to win just because her only standout solo moment is Ribbons Down My Back, which is a great song, but she doesn't have that's about it in terms of her solo moment to shine. Whereas, like you said, Stephanie J. Block gets that phenomenal number that you kind of leave the theater with that in your mind. Like that's the standout moment and song of that revival. I also have Rachel Bay Jones out front. I have Jen Coletta in there as well for Come From Away. The fifth slot right now, I have Mary Beth Peil for Anastasia. And the only reason why is she has done so many shows in the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, hasn't received recognition for it. She's a really hardworking theater industry actress, hasn't been Tony nominated since the 1990s when she was in The King and I. Yeah, so it's been a really long time, and it's not a fantastic role, but she does have a solo song. She opens the show, and she has some strong scenes in Act 2 of Anastasia. So I think maybe just on the merit of her career and how long she's been absent from the Tonys, she could take that slot. But there are very many actresses I could see taking that fifth slot in her place too. So I'm not confident about her at all.
Yeah, the reason why I hesitated with that was because there's two actors. There's also Caroline O'Connor from Anastasia.
Yep.
A lot of people, I think have preferred her, and some prefer Mary Beth Peil. And I'm not sure there's room for both of them. I'm not sure Anastasia's dominant a musical, so that was why I was hesitant about.
That's a great point. And I will say that is her name O'Connor? Carolyn O'Connor?
Yes,
is that right?
Carolyn O'Connor.
Okay, Carolyn O'Connor. She has a really standout number in the second act of Anastasia. The only reason why I'm not predicting her is because I think the number is entirely throwaway. Like if you cut her number from that show, you wouldn't miss anything in terms of plot. It's fun, and she kills it. I mean, she is mugging for the audience, and they love it. But I think if you're sitting in the audience and you're not really loving the show overall, I don't see the purpose of her number as a standout moment. So I think maybe that's why she doesn't get in. But she would be deserving in terms of what she does on stage.
Just before we switch to featured actor in a musical, it's funny that you mentioned Ribbons Down Your Back because Barbra Streisand infamously did the movie role, and she said before she started filming that was her favorite song from the show. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny because she was so, at 26, she was the youngest ever Dolly, and I guess at 70, Bette Midler's the oldest ever Dolly on Broadway. But in terms of featured actors, so we've mentioned Gavin Creel. Who else do you sort of see in the mix?
This is really hard. No, go ahead, Sam.
This one, I have Gavin Creel, and I think he's actually the only guaranteed nominee, to be honest. After that, I have Brandon Aronowitz from Falsettos, Nick Cordero, A Bronx Tale, Will Rowland, Dear Evan Hansen, and I just put in Lucas Steele for The Great Comet.
Yeah, okay, so I have Gavin Creel as well. I have Lucas Steele, and I think Lucas is a bit more, I think he's probably safe. I was just reading an article in Playbill today about how he's been with the show since its inception many years ago. So I think if people know that, if insiders know that.
Most of the cast has. But he's done a good job of getting him more press.
Exactly,
putting him out there and giving him a lot of great write-ups. So I think that can definitely help push him to the forefront.
I have Brandon as well for Falsettos. I also have Andrew Rannells for Falsettos. I don't know if they can get 2 in, but I don't know. I feel like if they're going to nominate Christian Borle, Andrew is a likely nominee as well because they play all of their scenes opposite each other. He's a previous Tony nominee. I also have Nick Cordero in there for pretty much those same reasons. He got in for Bullets Over Broadway when that show really kind of fell on its face in terms of its awards reception, and he managed to get in. And I think that's one of the few categories that Bronx Tale will get a nomination in. Choreography probably, maybe a few others, but Nick is probably the one big nomination that they would get. But I'm not confident about that either, to be honest.
I'm not confident about Bronx Tale's overall awards performance, but I do think Nick Cordero gets in. I do think it could. I've went out on a limb, and I think I have it in book right now, just because Chaz Palminteri did it, and it could be a way to honor him. I was surprised to see Andrew Rannells shoot up, and he's in the front runner spot, I think, for the experts on the site. When I saw Falsettos, I mean, he was great. I left the show being like, Stephanie J. Block and Brandon Aranowitz completely stole the whole thing to me. And so with Andrew and featured actor, I just thought that Brandon is going to be people's #1 choice. It's a matter of if they liked it enough to put 2 actors in.
Andrew just have the more emotionally needy role in the sense.
The tragic. Role,
exactly.
Which is different from what Andrew Rannells has usually been cast as.
Yeah, I don't know. To that point, though, I don't know if he did enough to shake his kind of his usual character traits in portraying Whizzer. I don't know if it was a perfect match of actor and role. But I thought what he did with the role, especially given the dramatic heft of it, would be enough to get him in, especially since we know he's on Tony voters' radar from Book of Mormon, and he's always stayed in kind of the public consciousness.
Well, we'll know Tuesday morning, and then hopefully you guys will be able to come back on Tuesday evening, and we can talk about everything we got right and ignore the stuff we got wrong. We know there'll be a Laura Metcalf moment. There'll be a surprise, which is always make.
Yeah.
Me somewhat with my predictions. So we'll check back on Tuesday.